Many of you may already have seen the contents of this video when you watched the history of the Scarlet Moon Empire video that I made. I've taken the War of Succession portion of that video and uploaded it here as a standalone video. For those that haven't seen it, the War of Succession was a civil war that took place in the Scarlet Moon Empire before the events of Suikoden 1, between Emperor Barbarosa and his uncle Gail, who had been scheming behind the scenes, behind his nephew's back to steal the throne for himself. I know I haven't been uploading much lately and I'd like to apologise for the lack of videos. For those that aren't aware or who didn't see the community post that I made, my channel has recently been hit by a lot of fake copyright claims from a known scammer called Latin Authorperf, who spam claimed a bunch of my videos in an attempt to steal the ad revenue. I'm currently in the process of disputing all of these claims, but unfortunately YouTube's dispute system treats you as guilty until you prove yourself innocent, and it leaves you pretty much entirely at the mercy of the person making the false claims. You can imagine having to deal with that has really killed my motivation for making videos right now. Spending hours writing a video, an hour or two recording it, and then sometimes, especially with these history documentary style videos, hours editing maps and art assets, and then upwards of 12 hours editing the footage, only for some scammer to swoop in and say mine, and then try to steal what little ad revenue it makes. It's demoralizing and demotivating, and that's the reason I haven't really been uploading anything lately. I have begun writing some videos though. The High East Rebellion video is already fully written, but when I'll actually start recording them is another story. The copyright disputes with the scammer probably won't be sorted out until around the end of this month, but I don't want to go that long without uploading anything or I feel like I'll be buried by the algorithm. So I really appreciate you for clicking into this partial re-upload, and I promise more videos are coming. I'd just like to wait until I get the fake copyright claims sorted out first. The War of Succession. In the solar year 446, a civil war broke out within the empire between the crown prince Barbarosa Rugner and his uncle Geil Rugner, who had been scheming to take the throne for himself. A war that was aptly named the War of Succession. Years prior to this war, Scarlet Rugner, the 14th Emperor of the Scarlet Moon Empire, while on his deathbed would name his youngest son Michaelan as the heir to the throne. Gail was unhappy with his father's decision to name his younger brother the heir, feeling like he had been robbed of his birthright, though he would never show these feelings in public, instead giving the outward appearance of support to his brother. With the exception of the Joustin raid on the Dana region in the year 439, Michaelan's reign as emperor was rather peaceful and uneventful. Michaelan was generally viewed as a weak emperor. His older brother Gail would take advantage of Michaelan's lack of political prowess, scheming behind his brother's back and gaining influence with nobles, aristocrats and people in positions of power. Michaelan had 6 sons. Barbarosa, being the youngest of those 6 sons, was considered to have no chance of sitting on the throne, and as such was relatively ignored, with little attention paid to his tutelage, and being allowed to pursue his own interests. As a child, Barbarosa would often spend his time playing with commoners. As the years passed, Michaelan's 2 eldest sons fell ill and died to different diseases. Michaelan was worried that his other sons had grown soft and corrupt thanks to their pampering in the palace, and so declared Barbarosa, his youngest son, as the crown prince and the heir to the throne. By the end of Michaelan's rule, Gail had gained influence over the majority of the aristocrats, nobles, and people in positions of power within the imperial court. Geil Rugner, the 15th Emperor of the Scarlet Moon Empire, died in the solar year 446, while the Crown Prince Barbarosa and 5 of his 6 loyal generals were away from the capital. Barbarosa was away in the Kunan region praying for a good harvest. Both Quando Rossmann and Milik Oppenheimer were escorting him, acting as his bodyguards. Qasim Hazil was away in the Senan region protecting the northern border, unable to leave the region due to tensions with the neighbouring city-states of Joustan. Kilauea Shulan, the admiral of the Imperial Navy, was stationed in the fortress of Shazarazade, the headquarters of the Imperial Navy. George Prime's exact whereabouts within the Empire at this time is unknown, but he was away from the capital at this time. The only person of power loyal to Barbarossa who remained in the capital was Teo Macdull. Seeing this as the perfect time to make his move, Geil Rugner and Assam, a judiciary, a legal officer within the Scarlet Moon Empire, would come up with a plan to lure Teo Macdull away from the capital. Assam would hire pirates, paying them a sizable sum of potch to terrorise Torin Lake and the Guran region. They would then inform Teo of the pirate attacks happening in the region. Teo, fearing that Barbarossa's path to the capital would be cut off by the pirates attacking the Guran region, immediately set out from Gregminster to aid Kilauea Shulan in dealing with the pirates. Teo, not having any time to mobilise his main force, would leave them behind in the capital. Teo would ride out only with whatever portions of his armoured cavalry were already outside of the city walls, including his subordinates unit, Ain Guide, whose cavalry were also stationed outside the city. As Teo was leaving Gregminster, Gail turned to Assam and asked, "How long will it take for Teo to pass Quaba Fortress?" To which Assam would respond, 5 days. In 5 days' time, Geil Rugner would make his move. As soon as Teo's forces crossed Quaba Fortress, Gail's men, led by Bergen, who was the commander of Quaba Fortress, would make their move. They locked the fortress down, cutting Barbarossa and his generals off from the Arlis region, the capital region of the Empire. Gail, back in the capital, would convene a meeting of the House of Lords, where he called for an abdication trial. Gail had his father's will forged. Presenting this forgery to the court, Gail would claim that his brother Michaelan stole the throne from him. He demanded that Michaelan's son, Barbarossa, the crown prince, should have his right to the throne removed, and that he himself should be named the new emperor. With the help of Assam and the other aristocrats and nobles that Gail had gained the support of, or influence over through blackmail, Barbarossa's right to the throne was revoked. Gail, who was heavily backed by his generals Schmidt, Bergen and Kreutz, as well as now having the loyalty of Assam and the imperial court, would usurp the throne from his nephew and become the 16th Emperor of the Scarlet Moon Empire. This act would mark the beginning of the War of Succession. Gail, now controlling the majority of the Imperial army, ordered them to capture and kill all who were loyal to Barbarossa, as well as all who opposed his ascension to the throne. Chaos erupted in the capital as all soldiers loyal to Barbarossa and his generals were killed in Gail's surprise attack. All nobles and aristocrats loyal to Barbarossa were taken hostage, including Teo Macdull's only son, Tir Macdull. Gail bolstered his forces by hiring a sizable amount of bandits, and during the ensuing chaos in the capital, they would sack and loot the city. With Gail now controlling the majority of the Imperial army, as well as having an army of bandits and pirates on his payroll, Gail's forces would vastly outnumber that which were loyal to his nephew Barbarossa. Barbarossa and those loyal to him were unaware of what had transpired in the capital. Gail's forces would launch an attack on the unsuspecting Barbarossa, taking him by surprise and easily overwhelming and routing Barbarossa's force. Barbarossa's wife Claudia was killed during the retreat. The death of his beloved wife would cause him much grief and heartache. Gail and his men would then turn their attention to Barbarossa's divided generals and easily overwhelm their splintered forces. Shazarazade was overrun with pirates and Kilauea Shulan was forced to retreat from the fortress. Qasim Hazil was ejected from the Senan region. With most of Barbarossa's forces routed and with Gail now dominating the war and controlling most of the empire, it looked like the war was all but over. Barbarossa would issue the order to his loyal generals to regroup at Panu-Yakuta Castle, a secluded and defensible region in the southeast of the empire. Yakuta Castle would become their temporary headquarters as they rallied their forces and regained their strength. It's unknown if Kilauea Shulin's navy made land and joined with Barbarossa's forces at Yakuta, or if she set up at Torin Castle and maintained the fight against the pirates. Matthew Silverberg, who was Qasim Hazil's strategist, suggested to Barbarossa that they recruit his uncle Leon Silverberg. Gail's army, largely the bandits and pirates within his army, would loot and pillage towns and villages across the empire, leaving ruin everywhere they went. Gail's reign became more oppressive, and this would begin to start turning public sentiment against Gail and in the favour of Barbarossa. Barbarossa's forces would take advantage of this, as Quanda Rossman would travel to all of the villages located around the Great Forest surrounding Yakuta, recruiting men for the war. At this point in the war, no details are known about the specific movements of either side's armies or their generals, and no details are known about any battles, skirmishes, or conflicts that happened between them. However, we know, thanks to Leon Silverberg's tactical brilliance and genius, that Barbarossa's forces began to turn the tide of the war, going from being on the defensive to going on the offensive. The next notable event in the Civil War was when Pan, who was a talented officer in Geil Rugner's army, would meet Tio on the battlefield, and the two would duel. Tio would defeat Pan in their duel, and Pan would then swear fealty to Tio and would agree to join Barbarossa's side. With Barbarossa's forces now launching successful counter-offensives, Gail would tighten his grip on the throne. His reign became even more brutal and oppressive. This would completely turn public sentiment against Gail and in favour of Barbarossa. Tio's armoured cavalry saw many victories throughout the war, leading to Tio to become known as the Invincible General, as he hadn't lost a single battle throughout the war. During one of these battles, Tio would save the life of Gremio, who had suffered a wound to his face, leaving a scar. Eventually, the Dragon Knights, led by Joshua Levenheit, who normally remain neutral in conflicts, would choose to ally with Barbarossa and come to his aid against Gail's forces. With the momentum now on Barbarossa's side, and his forces pushing back Gail's forces and gaining control over the regions of the Empire, Barbarossa would order Tio MacDull to march on Quaba Fortress with his armoured cavalry, as capturing Quaba Fortress would allow them to enter the Arlis region and attack Gail's forces in the capital of Gregminster. Gail, fearing the advance of Tio's armoured cavalry, would seek the advice of Assam, who would come up with one final plan to regain the upper hand in the war and to gain the advantage in the upcoming battle. They planned to use Tio's son Tyr as leverage. A message was delivered to Tio's camp. Gail's main force will arrive at Quaba in 2 weeks for a showdown with Tio, but under the condition that Tio fight without the armour on his cavalry, otherwise his son Tyr will be killed. Tio was unwilling to compromise his loyalty and beliefs for the ransoming of his son and would reject the ultimatum from Gail's forces out of hand. The morale of Tio's men would suffer greatly as news of Tyr's kidnapping spread throughout the camp. Aenguide would volunteer to lead the charge in the upcoming battle, but Tio would reject his offer. Gremio, upon hearing the news, would depart from Tio's camp and go on a mission to rescue Tyr. Gremio would find a fisherman in a nearby village who agreed to take him upriver towards the capital. The fisherman informed Gremio that Kilauea Shulin's navy were putting up a good fight against the pirates. Upon reaching Gregminster, Gremio would find the city in ruins, houses destroyed and burned to the ground, and martial law declared. At night, he would sneak into the ruins of the MacDull mansion looking for signs of Tyr. There, he was caught by surprise and attacked by a patrolling soldier, but would be rescued by a boy called Ag, who threw a brick at the back of the soldier's head. Ag would inform Gremio that he overheard soldiers talking about taking Tyr to Saradi, a remote village in the mountains west of Gregminster, where he would be handed over to some bandits. Ag stole 2 horses from the Imperial soldiers, and Gremio and Ag would ride for Saradi immediately. It would take Gremio and Ag 2.5 to 3 days to arrive at Saradi. Upon reaching Saradi, they would find the normally quiet village overrun with villagers who fled from Gail's oppressive rule. Gremio and Eiji asked around for information, and the item store owner would reveal that Gail's men were here recently, and that they tried to steal his wares. He would then reveal that they had a young child with them, and that they were holed up at the inn. Gremio and Eiji would rush towards the inn where they'd meet Ranetz, the owner of the inn. To sum up a rather lengthy portion of the story, Gremio and Eiji would eat at the inn while trying to gather intel. Ranetz, realizing they had no money to pay off their meal, would force them to work for her. Gremio cooked up his famous stew for the soldiers, but he slipped sleeping pills into the food, knocking some of the soldiers out. Gremio and Eiji would begin fighting the remaining soldiers. During this fight, the Mount Tigerwolf bandits arrived. The bandits were there to take Tyr off of the hands of Gail's soldiers, and with Gremio and Eiji now severely outnumbered and looking like they had no hope of winning, Ranetz would join the fight. Ranetz revealed that she was once a member of the Mount Tigerwolf bandits and was known as Ranetz of the Dual Rapiers. After the three of them defeated all of the bandits and soldiers, they would rescue the young Tyr MacDull, an event that would endear Tyr to Gremio. As Gremio held Tyr in his arms, comforting him, a soldier, with his last ounce of strength, would throw his sword at Gremio, grazing his face and giving him his second scar. A scar that Gremio saw as a proud reminder of how he fought off Gail's troops to rescue Tyr. Gremio swearing that, no matter when, no matter where, he will always protect the young master, an oath he would carve into the hilt of his axe. Eiji would take one of the horses and ride for Tio's camp as quickly as possible to deliver word of Tyr's rescue to Tio. Schmidt and Bergen would pledge their loyalty once more to Geil Rugner and march a large cavalry force in the defence of Quaba. Guide and Cleo, who both served under Tio, would also lead their cavalry units alongside Tio as they marched on the fortress of Quaba. Eiji would arrive at Tio's camp just in time before the battle would begin, notifying Tio of the rescue of his son Tyr, allowing Tio to fight with his cavalry armoured. Gail's forces outnumbered Tio's forces 2-1. Schmidt commanded a force of 2,000 cavalry, with Bergen commanding a force of 1,000 cavalry, bringing their force to a total of 3,000 cavalry, while Cleo and Guide only commanded 1,000 cavalry, with Tio commanding a force of 500 armoured cavalry, totaling only 1,500 cavalry. Schmidt, while a fierce general, only knew how to do head-on assaults. Tio would take advantage of this by utilising his armoured cavalry to lead the charge, breaking through Schmidt's lines. Bergen and Schmidt's forces were soundly defeated and both would be killed in the battle. With the war now all but won, Barbarossa's forces marched on Gregminster and made quick work of what remained of Gail's army. There, Geil Rugner was killed at Gregminster Palace by his nephew Barbarossa. With the nation in ruins from the war, Barbarossa would finally secure his place as the 17th Emperor of the Scarlet Moon Empire. Following Barbarossa's ascension to the throne, Gail's only remaining general, Kreutz, would flee the country. George Prime would resign from his position as a general shortly after the War of Succession and Barbarossa's victory, with George considering his oath to Barbarossa fulfilled. Thanks again for watching this partial re-upload. If you like this video, please leave a like, a comment, subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I promise more videos are on the way. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you on the next video.